Thanks for staying with us here on Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Christina Evans. As promised before we went to that 2-minute break, we're going to continue to talk about some of today's top stories, showing you this live look that we have there at the White House. Big news coming today from our nation's capital. President Trump says that there will be a 25% tariff on imported cars. This is now targeting the auto industry, affecting several states around our nation. Also want to show you this live look that we have there in Michigan and Detroit. So we do know that companies like Ford and General Motors have already expressed concern over the president's economic plans and the damage that it could potentially do to the auto industry. So I now want to get a perspective there from Fox 2 and Detroit with Dave Kinchen. Thank you so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. Dave, what are folks saying there in Michigan as these Trump tariffs have now been announced?
Well, good evening. It's good to be with you. We're coming to you from really the heart of the American auto industry. The Detroit Three, or Big Three as they're known. Ford, of course, General Motors, as you alluded to, and Stellantis, which is the parent company of the Chrysler brands, all watching this move very carefully as they work to adjust a very delicate industry, still dealing with the EV space, electric vehicles, and so much more. Now, this news is also being watched by the UAW, and as they continue to try to keep as many jobs and many people employed as possible in the always rapidly changing auto industry. So we'll lay out what this new tariff program means from President Trump, and then we have some analysis, and then we'll tell you what the UAW says about it as well. But first, here's the latest on this 25% tariff announced today for vehicles that are made overseas and brought into the United States.
So we'll effectively be charging a 25% tariff. But if you build your car in the United States, there is no tariff.
The next round of the tariff wars starts up April 2nd. And this time, the Trump administration is focusing on imported vehicles and parts. And that means sticker shock likely coming to a dealership near you.
You're going to see higher prices, and it's going to have a chilling effect, in my opinion.
George Glassman is one of the many auto dealers who will be grappling with the new tariffs, and he says the entire industry will feel it.
With half of all vehicles that are sold in the United States coming from overseas, it can't do anything other than create major disruption across the automotive industry.
Analysts say the move is part of a strategy for the Trump administration to get auto companies to increase their amount of car and truck production in America.
A lot of companies are going to be in great shape because they've already built their plant, but their plants are underutilized, so they'll be able to expand them inexpensively and quickly. But others will come into our country and build, and they're already looking for sites.
So that would be German vehicles that are produced in Germany, Japanese vehicles that are produced in Japan, British vehicles, Range Rover, Land Rover, for example, produced in the UK. All of those vehicles will have a 25% tariff.
But that doesn't automatically give the Detroit Three the advantage, according to Jan Griffiths, a former auto supplier executive.
At first, you might think, well, this is great news. Well, everybody's going to buy U.S.-made vehicles. The catch is a significant amount of the vehicles sold in the U.S. by the Big Three are actually made in Mexico and Canada. And as far as we know, they will be subject to the 25% tax.
What's more, if the tariffs stay in place for several months, just as some economists see a recession on the horizon, that could mean bad news for auto workers in our area.
Then I think that the combined effect of those two things could be significant on auto jobs in the United States, and you could see some sizable layoffs across all three companies.
And that was Merrick Masters, a business professor at the university, the Wayne State University in Detroit. We are hearing from the UAW about all of this. They actually issued a statement that might seem surprising to people who have followed that often tense relationship between President Trump and the UAW. Certainly, UAW President Shawn Fain has not been a fan of President Trump, at least going back to the campaign. But the UAW says this tariff move, the 25% on imports, is actually a win for the American worker. They issued a very lengthy statement, the United Auto Workers, essentially saying that this marks a finally a policy shift, a long overdue shift from the policies that have devastated the working class and have really caused harm to the auto industry. Meantime, we do know that executives with the big three, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, the parent company of Chrysler and the Jeep brands and such, they're set to meet with the Trump administration to perhaps work out some deals that might see the Trump administration roll back on some of those tariffs, particularly if the administration can get some gains and some promises to do more auto manufacturing in the United States as opposed to elsewhere. So we'll keep on watching this all for you from Detroit. Reporting live, Dave Kinchen, back to you.
And Dave, before I let you go, I have to ask you, you also covered the UAW strike that happened at the end of 2023 pretty extensively. How has the auto industry since then been doing there in the state of Michigan, in Detroit area? Like you're saying, the tariffs are going to affect them, but in a whole, how's the auto industry been doing?
Well, it's been fragile, really, as it relates to the EVs. You know, the UAW had gone after, in particular, Stellantis over what they called unfair labor practices. One of the big things that the UAW has been trying to get is for all of the big three to keep honoring the agreements made, especially as it relates to the work in that contract that ended that historic strike. Remember, that strike was the first time the UAW walked the picket line against all three of the American automakers. That had never happened before, and a big part of that agreement was getting work secured as it relates to electric vehicles, battery production, making sure that all of that work goes into that master agreement so that they can save those jobs. But there's been fluctuations. Stellantis, most notably, even with their leadership changes at the top, they've had fluctuations that have led to some layoffs here and a reorganization of what vehicles are produced and where. So it's a bit fragile, especially for the suppliers as well. But overall, everybody watching this very closely, because there is the concern with economic instability out there. As some economists are saying, there could be a recession. There is very much the fear that there could be some layoffs here. So still very fragile. I'd say somewhat fragile since the strike, but everybody moving along as best as they can.
All right, again, Fox 2 in Detroit, Dave Kinchen, help us to break down the very latest as it relates to these Trump tariffs. We appreciate you for joining us on Live Now. All right, we did want to bring that story to you, and as Dave did just allude to there, we do have that statement from the UAW in full. I want to put it up there on your screen. As this is, again, something that was released today. In the wake of those Trump tariffs, they say, we applaud the Trump administration for stepping up to end the free trade disaster that has devastated working class communities for decades. Ending the race to the bottom in the auto industry starts with fixing our broken trade deals. And the Trump administration has made history with today's actions. These tariffs are a major step in the right direction for auto workers and blue-collar communities across the country. And it is now on the automakers, from the big three to Volkswagen and beyond, to bring back good union jobs to the United States.